Hello, AP Psychology. So we are going to keep going with our biological basis of psychology. We started off in our first video looking at the neuron and how that message is passed through the dendrites to the axon, out through the terminal buds, and then that message gets sent to our body. So that's where we're at now. So how now what does our body do with that message? And so we need to learn about the nervous system to understand how our body processes that information. Where does it go? So today, the learning targets that we have from the College Board, you need to be able to describe the nervous system and all of its subdivisions and functions. And that includes the central and peripheral nervous systems. So you've got a great graphic organizer. Hopefully that will help keep all of these systems and subdivisions all organized in an easy way for you all. So let's get started. So the nervous system, what it consists of is basically all of our nerves cells. And it's our body's way of sending speedy electrochemical communication messages. This is the system, right? This is how information gets sent from our senses to the brain and back out to the body. So we have to think of it in terms of two different systems. And so first, we need to look at the central nervous system. And the central nervous system consists of your spine and the brain. So if you think about it in terms of the location, it really is the center of your body. Your brain connected to the spine, and all of that runs through the center of your body. Okay, so the spine and the brain are the central nervous system. And then you have the peripheral nervous system. And the peripheral nervous system is made up of the sensory and motor neurons that connect the central nervous system to the rest of the body. Okay, and the peripheral means everything on the outside. If you think about peripheral vision, right, that's what you are seeing on the outside, your peripheral vision. So that's precisely what the peripheral nervous system is, okay? It is sort of those outside sensory and motor neurons. All right, so let's take a look at the central nervous system. Again, central, your spine and your brain runs through the central part of your body. And so the brain is the neural center of the body, and it's kind of like the control center. It's the one that sends all of those messages and it decides what's going to happen. Okay, it is the control center. Your spine acts as a highway of nerves, and it's our body's way of transmitting those messages to and from the brain. So the central nervous system is made up of the brain and the spine. And then you have the peripheral nervous system, and this is where it gets a little more detailed. And so the first thing that we need to look at is the autonomic nervous system. Don't get it confused with automatic. While it's similar, you would not want to use the term automatic in an FRQ, okay? So the autonomic nervous system controls your involuntary functions, okay, things that happen automatically without your body. You don't have to think about breathing. Okay, just happens automatically until someone like me draws attention to your breathing. You don't tell your heart to start pumping or stop. It is automatic. It is an involuntary action. Digestion is an involuntary action. So all of those activities, breathing, your heart rate, your digestion, okay, those are all part of the autonomic nervous system. The other part of the peripheral nervous system is what we call the somatic nervous system. And soma means body. If you remember the part of the neuron, okay, the nucleus, we called that whole area the soma, or the cell body. And the somatic nervous system controls your voluntary movements and communication to those sensory organs, because things don't just happen, okay? You have to have a message sent in order for some type of action to take place. So autonomic and somatic nervous systems, those are part of the peripheral nervous system. Okay, so there is an arrow here that just showed up, and that's telling us that there is more to the autonomic nervous system than just what we have here. There's more to the autonomic nervous system. Now we need to consider the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So what the sympathetic nervous system does, this is very much attached to our stress response. And so the sympathetic nervous system physically arouses the body. It's like, hey, wake up. You gotta handle a situation. You need to decide if you are going to fight this or flight, or leave it, take off, and not deal with it. Maybe you are a witness to a crime, a car accident, something. Your body is trying to decide whether you are going to act, react in a stressful situation. There is a lot of energy being mobilized in the sympathetic nervous system. The bottom line, however, is that we are not made to live in this state. Stress is bad for us, folks, and we'll learn about stress in a later unit this year. The sympathetic nervous system is an immediate response, that immediate arousal. And so we have to balance it in our bodies with another system called the parasympathetic. So that fight or flight, it is a reaction to stress. And then we also have a counter response. And that's what happens in the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system calms the body. It helps you to conserve energy and keep a constant internal state, and what we use the term from Action Potential. The term is homeostasis. And the term rest and digest will make sense here in the next slide. But I've got a little picture there of a parachute, because if you imagine a parachute falling from the sky, it's very calming. A parachute is very calming. It just slowly floats down, much like the parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, your nose, you're breathing in, and the stomach there, your gut. Let's bring our gut back to the homeostasis point. So what happens in the sympathetic nervous system when that fight or flight response is ignited? Okay, these are some of the potential responses for fight or flight. Your digestion is inhibited. The liver stimulates glucose production. And anytime you get an increase in glucose, it's going to impact what's happening in your body. Not to get all gross and talk about toilets. This is 2 for 2. Had toilets in the first lecture, now we're talking about toilets again. But think about when you're really stressed and your stomach is all tied up in knots, and maybe there's some constipation issues. That's the sympathetic nervous system. We will talk more about epinephrine and norepinephrine, but your adrenal glands release this adrenaline fuel to get us going. Come on, hello, wake up, react. Your pupils dilate to allow more light to get in, and your breathing increases, your heart rate increases. You've got to oxygenate that blood if you're going to get going. And this is your body's response. And then when it's time to get back to homeostasis, then the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. And then your gut starts working like it's supposed to. Your liver's not producing as much glucose. Your pupils contract and you relax, and your breathing and your heart rate begin to come down. Parasympathetic nervous system. So within our body, and as we talk about the nervous system, we need to be able to differentiate between the different types of neurons that we have. So the first type is what we call a sensory neuron. And the sensory neuron is what is bringing in that incoming message. And the sensory neuron carries the information from your sense receptors, primarily touch, hearing, taste, all of your five senses. Okay, sensory neurons bring in those messages, and you can see with the blue arrow there. We're going to use the sense of touch as our example here. So you touch something hot, it sends a message from the sensory neurons, those afferent neurons, to the brain. And then we have something called an interneuron, and these are the only neurons in the central nervous system. Okay, in the central nervous system, these are the intermediaries. Maybe you've heard that term. They are the messengers between the sensory and the motor neurons. Okay, interneurons only exist in the central nervous system. Your sensory neurons, the afferent neurons, they carry that incoming message, and then the interneurons receive that message, and now it's their job to take this message to the motor neurons. The motor neurons, and again, you see the color coding here, and it's intentional. The motor neurons are what we call the efferent neurons, and they are the ones that carry the outgoing information from the central nervous system to the peripheral nervous system and our muscles, and they tell the body what to do. Okay, and think of this as a little, like a game of telephone. Okay, we touch something, it's hot. Ooh, sensory neurons kick in. Hello, hello, it's hot, it's hot. Interneuron grabs that message. Ooh, we got to do something with this message. Hurry, send it to the brain. The brain has the message. The brain now sends that message to the motor neurons. Ooh, tell the hand to get it off the stove. It's hot. Okay, the motor neurons, that's where the action takes place, and those are efferent neurons. The brain has told them to act upon this message. So an easy way to remember motor neurons, and if you can remember that motor neurons are responsible for certain things, then it will allow you to remember the others. But a motor neuron is kind of, they are the action neuron, okay? You got to go do something, and you go do things in a car. These are the messages that are exiting the brain. Okay, you've taken in that information, and now the message is exiting the brain. And exit starts with an E. Efferent starts with an E. Efferent messages are the ones that leave your body and tell you to go do something. Sensory, incoming, or afferent. Interneurons take that message and communicate it to the brain, to the motor neurons. And then the motor neurons are what tell the body to do something. It's that exiting message. There's one more type of neuron, and this is actually a very new discovery in neuroscience. When I started teaching psychology 5 years ago, this had not been discovered. And when I explain what a mirror neuron is, it will make complete and total sense to you. So a mirror neuron, think of a mirror, it allows us to read others' emotions, their intent and their expressions, and to feel empathy. So think about a conversation that you've had with a person and they seem extremely upset. Maybe they're crying or they just look sad. What is your empathetic response? It's to also bring upon yourself a sad, emotional response. That's the work of a mirror neuron. Think about a sporting event. Even if you're not playing, you can still conjure up that excited reaction to scoring a touchdown, to a game-winning home run. Even if you're sitting at home, yes, we did it, and you're jumping around and the players are jumping around. Those are mirror neurons. Laughter ignites the response of mirror neurons. Do you think it's a surprise that in comedy television shows they have those laugh tracks? Because if you hear laughter, you are more likely to laugh along with it. So those are the different types of neurons. And we have lots more to learn when it comes to the brain. So we'll see you in the next lecture.